There's only been one Blade. There's only ever going to be one Blade.
Hi, folks. Welcome. We are Grown A Geeks, and this is another episode of Geek Chat. Today's episode is Marvel's Blade. What the hell, man? Like, what's going on? Why can't we get this Blade movie made? Joining me today is going to be Jeffrey JPNT 17. Jeffrey, what's going on, man? Also joining me, first of her name and part of all things Marvel, Miss Teresa. What's going on?
I'm here.
She is here. And I'm Elder Geek Sam. If you're new to the channel, we do ask that you like and subscribe. Click that QR code there in the corner. That'll take you to everywhere you can find us. Click the playlist and check out all of our previous videos and enjoy the show. We're here to talk about Blade because it just got announced that Blade has been pulled from the calendar. I don't know if that means the movie's actually been canceled, but as it stands right now, there is no tentative release date. But that's not really shocking because they don't have a director, they don't have a script. All we have are Ali and I think Mia Goth is still signed on to play the villain Lilith, but that's all we got. That's all we got. And so we've been hearing about this Blade movie for quite some time, and we already have the post credit scene where Mahershala Ali actually did voice work at the end of Eternals when Kit Harington's character was walking up to the sword and he touches it, and you think he's going to take the sword and become the Black Knight, and then we have Blade's voice in the background. You sure you want to do that? And so it was like the post-credit scenes kind of made us think, okay, hey, we've already heard about this Blade movie. When did they first announce this Blade movie? How many years ago was that? I feel like that's a good 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago.
That's a Jeffrey question. I have no idea.
I know the announcement in 2019.
July 2019.
Right.
Wow.
It was a Comic-Con announcement, and we had Mahershala Ali come out and he put on the hat and it said Blade on it. And, as we come to the close of 2024, still no Blade movie.
Where's that hat now?
Obviously collecting dust. Now, Jeff, you have the inside track when it comes to a lot of things and the way production works, having previously had direct contact with Marvel. What are your thoughts as to the major hold? What is the thing you think keeps this movie from being? Is there a single thing, or
I think that there's multiple things. I think that one, because it is a remake of a character that we've already seen before. There's a already foreseen amount of pressure that it puts on the character. I think after the success of Black Panther and the success of Luke Cage, there's also pressure when we bring Black characters to screen because we know how that can move the needle, not just culturally, but monetarily as well. So, right. But we also understand how Black people get, yes. And so we're not going to spoon feed them any sort of BS Blade. Then you have to think about the fact that everything that they've done for the most part has been incorporated. That has not really introduced the concept of vampires or the occult or any of that stuff yet, right? Like, we're just kind of really getting with magic for real. Like the Doctor Strange thing was still had this air of science that had not yet been explained. But now we're getting into the magic, the supernatural realms and all that kind of stuff. Right. And I think that when you look at I just went back and looked at the slate of things that Marvel talked about in that same comic, and they're all projects that came out, to most of them mixed reviews. So you got the Eternals, which we don't have to talk about at all. Falcon and Winter Soldier, I think, got mixed reviews. Shang-Chi, same thing. WandaVision, I think, was mostly positive, but Loki, same thing. Doctor Strange, I think, was underwhelming for most people. I don't really count What If because that's a cart in the same MCU. Hawkeye got Thor, Love and Thunder, everybody pretty. Black Widow, people, they were trying to just figure it out. And so they were in this tumultuous time period coming after the Infinity Saga, and then you also go right in. So the box office isn't box officing like it used to, where you could maybe get off one or two bad movies that didn't really move the needle. But now they were in a position where when they come back, plus, Chadwick Boseman died not too long after that. And so now all the attention is kind of on Mahershala to not just be Blade, but now you got to be that black moral
Figurehead almost.
You know what I'm saying? Like it just a lot of stuff I think compounded. And if to me, I think as frustrating as it is, and I want to see Blade on the screen, I at least respect the fact they're now looking at the projects that they're putting together and just being like, we don't want to put out, we rather just pull it off the calendar and pull it back. Now, I don't really think it's fair to Mahershala because I feel like he's kind of been on hold for a while with maybe even other stuff, keeping his calendar open for Blade. And so I kind of do feel sorry for him that the circumstances have prevented this movie from kind of coming out the way that we initially wanted it to. But I think once we start going in this cosmic direction with Fantastic Four and the merging of universes and all this other stuff that we still are kind of seeing, I think they are figuring out how to weave in the stuff that Blade comes with, because it's a whole separate corner of the Marvel universe. So once we figure out how that weaves in to the universe, and we're not just like, yeah, we could just make whatever character we want and people will go see it. They're realizing that people will go see it if it's good and people can connect to and back to the things that they already fell in love with Marvel about. Blade is good. People like it. People like the character, and you got to be respectful to the thing that the cornerstone of Marvel's like existence as a cinematic universe, the possibilities of a Marvel cinematic universe, the cornerstone of that is the original Blade franchise. So it's unfortunate, but I would rather them wait and get it right and then put out some BS just because they felt like they needed to for any sort of reason. Because it can look bad the other way. Now it's like, why y'all shelving the black movie? Y'all could have shelved some of that other BS. It's like how we be talking about the Batwoman movie, the Batgirl movie now.
Yeah.
Where it's like nobody's seen it, but people are we ready to get our torches and pitchforks and ride out to see that footage, because it can't be no worse than
what's
the
been
black
put out.
and white Snyder cut. Can't be no worse than that.
If you re-release a movie that's already been out for the third time, Justice League, we got Justice League 3 times. Huge fan of Superman, Justice League, and most things DC. But to get the Justice League, the Snyder cut, Justice is great. That's the same movie 3 times. That's the same movie 3 times.
Marvel is like the exact opposite. They like, we started putting out BS and we don't want to taint the imagery.
Yeah.
Like they understand. Like that's the one thing I will say about my experiences working with Disney and their subsidiary. They are stubborn on certain things, but when it's not working, starts affecting that bottom line. They do not have too much of an ego when it comes to pivoting, asking for help, because they were making their own style guides, and they were making, the images that we have to use for t-shirts and things like that. And things weren't selling the way that they thought, and things weren't getting bought the way that they thought they should. And they started coming to us and asking us for our ideas, and we would do little mock-ups. And then have you ever seen the image of the Guardians of the Galaxy logo that looks like the Ramones logo?
With the swirly, like it's Guardians, but it's
written. No, it's like how the Ramones is like the eagle, and it's like the names all around it, and it says Ramone, very blocky rock. Like if you look it up, you'll know what it is. It's like iconic.
Yeah, okay, I see that.
There's like a best-selling Guardians shirt that's like that. I did that and sent it to Disney as part of like our pitch of what we would do. This is based off the trailer. I was like, okay, let's take some rock logos and do some stuff. And that one ended up being like in the style guide that now Marvel is sending out to everyone else. Like a version of it. They changed theirs, but it was my content. And so they understand the power of fans, and they understand the power of the consumer, and they're gonna do what they got to do to get that right first, no matter.
Okay. I definitely feel that coming back with a Blade movie, it's not a new item. it would definitely be a reboot, so it automatically has to deal with a portion of that criticism, as you mentioned. But I think there's been enough time. Like, I don't know what the appropriate time frame is to reboot something. Sometimes things get rebooted a little too soon. And anytime you have something that's good, it makes sense on one hand to strike while the iron's hot, reboot it in like 10 years or so for the next generation or whatnot. But at the same time, if it's too soon, the original still exists and it still holds up to a degree. And now you have two items competing and you end up pitting one against the other. And surprisingly enough, sometimes that new item doesn't do as well because. So I can definitely see where some of those challenges come in. You mentioned Disney, and that was the first thing that came to my mind for Blade, is that this falls under Marvel, because when Blade first came out, it wasn't presented as a Marvel property. It was a vampire movie starring Wesley Snipes and the character Blade. And then the second one was the sequel to that cool ass vampire movie with Wesley Snipes as Blade. The third one, which was not the best of, wasn't that great. That one actually has the Marvel logo at the intro. And by that time, we've had some other movies that have dropped and people are now familiar with Marvel, because when that first movie got made, when the first Blade got made, I think the only thing we had from Marvel that people knew about was like Dolph Lundgren's Punisher, the Incredible Hulk TV show, the made for TV movies with Captain America and Thor, an old offbeat Spider-Man kind of, what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't what it is today. And there was nothing cinematic about what Marvel was putting out. So when that first Blade movie got made, it really just got touted as a cool vampire movie with a cool character, Blade. And then, of course, people kind of put the connections, connected the dots and realized who this was. And Marvel was able to take the funds and then they were able to kind of springboard and do other things because they saw that what they were putting out was halfway decent. So, unofficially, people are now able to go back and recognize Blade actually starting Marvel movies. We'll still give Iron Man credit as the MCU because that's that connected universe. But Blade started like Marvel movies being a thing. And so, of course, when I think about those first movies, that's a lot for Disney to try to suddenly, like, they're opening up a little bit and expanding out into some other areas as far as like the R-rated content. We have Deadpool, that's R-rated. Now that they're kind of saying like, okay, this works and this can be done. It's still Disney, and it's still a subsidiary of Disney. And it still strikes me odd to think that Disney's going to be connected to a vampire killer, like not just a vampire hunter.
I think that's the thing. Disney understand they are for everybody. Like Disney used to be Disney. It will always have the family image, right? But they are coming from an eye point of everybody needs entertainment, and so there are people in your family that want to see scary movies, and now they're getting into segmentation. They have enough customers, they have enough people, they have enough market penetration for like the whole group, right? Like they used to target families. Bring your family to Disneyland, or you can bring your whole family to see our films. Now all
Right.
of those families are like, so the first generation of people who grew up on Disney, it was the theme parks and it was Mickey Mouse cartoons. You grew up on it. You ain't talk to your parents about it. If you lived in California, maybe you could go to Disneyland. Maybe I would drive the station wagon across. Maybe not. Then those people had kids, right?
Right.
So the people who had Mouseketeers, they had kids, and those kids is like, all right, Mickey Mouse is like part of our life. He's like a character. Like my parents have passed him on, and so now those kids have kids, and you have like the Disney Channel era, the new Mickey Mouse Club era. You got, you're grooming like generations and generations of people to where now Disney is a household name, not just a household name where it's like, okay, when you have babies, people are gonna buy them a little Mickey Mouse plush, or you're gonna watch Disney movies with your kid. Now, as those people grow up, what are we as Disney giving those adults to keep them invested in Disney as well. And superheroes is cool, but sometimes people want something a little more adult. And
Right.
now they have the ability to segment to all of the different sections of their audience because they already have a comfortable market share in like those family and kids strongholds. So if they're going to grow their business, they have to start looking at other demographics currently serving and finding ways to segment and differentiate the things that they're providing to those customers. So even within Marvel, right? We talked about this before. A lot of people just started going to Marvel movies. Like we know some of our aunties and grandmas and stuff ain't start watching Marvel till Black Panther came.
Yeah.
They ain't go all the way back and watch Iron Man. They're not about to watch Thor 2: The Dark World. If Chadwick in it, I'm going.
Right.
If he not, I'll catch you next time. You know what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
they know every time they have a Black character, that's the potential. We'll see Sam Wilson. I don't know. I don't think it's gonna go quite like that for you. And I would say have fun, hanging out with the Thunderbolts, probably all new, all different Marvel Avengers team off the ground. Then maybe you can come try to tell Kamala Khan, because Captain Marvel ain't about to listen to you.
Nah,
You don't
not at
have
all.
no serum, my boy.
Teresa, what are your thoughts on Blade, the movie, the production, Disney, Marvel? Where do you stand on seeing a Blade movie?
It's disappointing that it keeps getting pulled, but I do agree that I would rather see, a polished product, especially one with Black characters, rather than something that's thrown together. I'm still hopeful. I'm disappointed that it keeps getting pulled. I don't know what the problem is. I hope Mahershala isn't difficult to work with. I think he's a great casting for Blade, and I'm excited to see him play Blade. I have a little Wesley Snipes loyalty too, but he's in his 60s. So he could be Blade Senior.
Yeah, the minute I saw him on Expendables, I think that was the explanation right there. Like you an over the hill action star, and he looked good, and he looked good in Marvel and Deadpool and Wolverine.
Deadpool. Yeah,
but he
right.
looked old.
Right.
He doesn't look like he needs to be trying to do the same stunts he was doing in the first Blade.
I agree. So I want Mahershala to do this if he wants to do it. But I think it was a good casting. I just think it's unfortunate that whatever keeps happening keeps happening.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to throw in that Jeff mentioned Sam Wilson. And no, that's not going to have the same draw that Chadwick did. But with Chadwick, you had Black Panther and you had Wakanda as well. So I think that that whole universe had a pull. Had a draw of all of the, like, I don't want to say non-Marvel, but all of the all of the people who weren't following the superheroes or whatever. They saw Wakanda along with Chadwick as the Black Panther, and everybody came to see the movie. You're not going to have that for Sam Wilson. I am looking forward to that though.
Right.
Yeah. I think I'm just kind of clouded right now because I'm mad that Moon Girl got canceled.
Yeah. That's another, like, Marvel. What the hell? Like,
right.
That was an excellent show.
That show is so damn good. I mean, everything, the music, the topic storylines, the cast, they got A-list.
Yeah.
Actors, not just voice actors, A-list actors as regulars on that show, and people falling all over themselves to do guest characters and stuff. And I just don't get it. Why they would cancel it. The show is amazing.
The funny thing about the MCU as a whole is the MCU is old now. People who started with the first Iron Man movie, you've got 10, 12 years in this universe, this world. And if you were 15 when you started watching Marvel movies and and maybe you weren't a comic book person, that wasn't your thing, but you started watching these Marvel movies and you've had 10 years or 10 plus years to grow up with this. Well, now you're 25 and the same thing that appealed to you, the formula, new hero origin story, boom, there's a movie. Main villain is the mirror image of the hero. And then the second movie, he grows a little bit more and goes on a side venture. And then the third movie, because like it used to be, if a hero came out, we knew there was going to be 3 movies. Like there was a very routine formula. And now we're at a point where things have changed. Disney Plus is a whole thing. And, when I look at something like this movie Blade not being made, I'm wondering, like, does it still have to be a movie at this point? Because if we got Werewolf by Night as a TV show, we got Moon Knight, we have all these shows that are on Disney Plus. While I want the big tent pole, there's a budget concern. What you got?
But that's the thing. It's going to be a budget concern because it's Mahershala. So if we're talking about Mahershala not playing anymore and they're bringing in some unknown so-and-so like they're doing for Green Lantern, okay, we can get away with a TV show. But the whole about
he wasn't bigger than Luke Cage.
No. Mahershala is bigger than Luke Cage is now.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. He's coming out in the movie now.
Is he though?
So
but
that's what I'm saying. Like he's attached to the role now, which means you have to treat him with the respect that if they had come out originally and said this is the TV show for Disney Plus, I don't think it being a TV show would be a problem. But I think if it gets demoted from movie to either on app movie / TV show, I mean, they already just went through all this with Scarlett Johansson. A lot of their contracts have language built in where what they get paid is directly tied to the profitability of the movie. Once you take that out of the box office and you put that on an app where you never disclose any of your viewership numbers and you don't actually want people to understand any sort of a metric to where they can create a number that explains what their worth is by using how much people watch them on your app. So they're always going to be like, then
that's
this
where
needs
you
to
get
go
into
out
like
into
points
the movie
on the back
where you
end
get
and box office.
Because that's public information that the company can't hide from.
Okay, and I can accept that under the circumstance, but I think that's actually, I don't know, is that a Kevin Feige issue, or is that because on the one hand it kind of feels contracts? Like not the contracts. I mean, that contracts are contracts. That's going to be what it's going to be. But I'm just saying in regards to what was announced,
not coming out.
Yeah, what was announced versus what's happening, because and I say this very loosely, so take this with a grain of salt. But of course, the rumor mill is that there's creative differences. Every time the Blade movie gets pushed, it's always been creative differences. Like there's news out there that says that they had like $140 million budget, and so it's like you're trying to make a movie with $140 million budget, and you got Mahershala Ali. Like, okay, well, a large chunk of your funding is gone, and now you're looking at, instead of having like maybe all of these,
unless he has a friendly contract that gives him a lot of points on the back end. Marvel's not really doing that anymore because they did that with Robert Downey Jr. and they ended up having to give him like $1 billion almost.
Yeah,
because Avengers went crazy. But like it's possible that he doesn't eat into that as much as you might assume. The issue is not with Mahershala, because he's the one that's still attached to the project. Issue, I think, is with some of the directors. Like, if you read and you listen to what a lot of directors have said about doing Marvel movies, a lot of times creative struggle working without complete autonomy. And the director position is one of those positions where that's something that you can get used to. But there's directors who can come in and direct a few episodes of a TV show. And then there's directors where it's like, I got to be the showrunner, the writer, the director, camera. They don't know how to like let go and let other people kind of take over other aspects of the project. So there's directors who can come in, like the Russo brothers can come into Marvel and do a good job and work within the confines of like an established universe. But I think, especially when you're talking about introducing a whole new element, I understand how there could be creative differences over how a director wants to introduce vampires and how Kevin Feige might want. And the director is going to leave because they're like, when this movie sucks, I'm going to be the one getting doxxed, and I'm going to be the one getting my Rotten Tomato meter going down, and people going to be talking about my movie the way, because I ain't see y'all putting out no statements of support for Nia DaCosta when she was going through it out here with the fans. So people just like, I'll just leave before I work on some, and they just have to they just have to find the right angle, and they have to find a director who's willing to take that. And I think they just haven't found it.
So let's look at, because we've probably written easily 10 movies on this channel. If you go back and you go back and just watch through some of our videos, they don't tell how many movies we've actually written. If nothing else, conceptualized, and we have enough material to do some serious like pitch meetings. What are you looking for out of the Blade movie with Mahershala? Open.
Well, as I've said before, with me being such a Marvel head or MCU head, I love those movies. I love some of the ones that nobody, that other people don't love. In my eyes, when certain actors come into the MCU, to me, that's big. So whenever they announce like, just an example, Jason Momoa is coming into the MCU. I'm like, oh, that's like, time for me to be popping bottles or whatever, because I love Jason Momoa and I love the MCU. So now he's in the MCU, so I'm happy. So to me, it's like, even if stars are already made, when they come into the MCU, that's still a big thing for me. It's like they're in my family now. It's like that's my cousin now.
No, and I get that.
And so I'm ready for Mahershala to be my cousin.
Right.
And also Blade, I think the original, because like you said, when Blade came out, it wasn't a Marvel. It was just a cool black vampire movie. And so with it having Wesley Snipes and with it being about a black vampire, it hit a smaller audience. It has more of a niche audience. But bringing Blade into the MCU gives it a larger audience. And to me, a more warm and fuzzy feeling, because it's now part of the MCU. If that makes sense.
No, that absolutely makes sense, because just to piggyback on that, I think one of the things that makes the original Blade and even Blade 2 so good is within the confines of its own movie. Like, we got all of the elements of a superhero without calling him a superhero. We got a superhero landing. We got the big boss battle at the end. We got, all the one-liners. We got all the cliche things that you get from a good superhero movie. And on top of that, we had Wesley Snipes just being cool as hell the entire flick. You know what I'm saying? And so it definitely played to an unknown target audience. And I wouldn't go as far as to call Blade like a what's the phrase? It's not one of those, like, it is a good movie and it is a successful movie overall. It's not one of those like people go back, it's a hidden gem kind of thing. Like, Blade stands out as a whole as a good movie. The second one, good follow-up. Third one, but by the third movie, and of course you can read all the information, there was some weird things happening at that point. And I think it actually came in that because of the success of the first two movies, they were really trying to go Hollywood with it, and it lost
too many
made
chefs, too many chefs in the kitchen.
It lost what made the first two movies good. Now, first thing that comes to my mind when I think about a Blade movie is, part of me is already connected to the character. So I want to come in like Spider-Man Homecoming. Let's just jump right in with Blade. I don't need origin. And the cool thing is, even the first one didn't have origin. It was just conversation at different point where it's like, well, your mother got bit by a vampire and then had you. So that's why you're half it. It's like everything, all the detail. We didn't do like this 20-minute origin story of him as a kid. And we just skipped all past that. We got right into the meat. And we're dealing with an established character at this point. So you can just jump right in both feet and get right to the meat and potatoes of the movie. With the MCU, I think one thing that is really important is they need to recognize the success they've had with the items that are not directly connected in their universe. The biggest issue I have with the Blade movie getting made is post-credit scene from the Eternals, where I won't say Blade was first announced, but like that's like Blade is technically in the MCU as a result of that post-credit scene from the Eternals. And the post-credit scene was supposed to set something up that is obviously not going to happen or has not happened yet. Let me say that because I'm not going to say it's not going, has not happened yet. And we don't hear Kit Harington talking about his Marvel contract or, you know, what he has happening in the future. And so it's just like, that's kind of over there somewhere. And we'll see what happens. With Blade, you come in, you tell a good story, you tell something interesting, but it doesn't have to be related to anything we've seen already. If they can find a way to weave it into something else that they want to do, because you take Agatha all along, you really only have to watch WandaVision. And if you watch WandaVision and you didn't watch all 25 movies in the MCU, you're caught up. Like by the end of the show, you know what's what, who's who the main players are, what the story is about, what the characters are, and why things are happening. So when you come into Agatha, you could really watch Agatha even if you didn't watch Wanda, because the self-contained story kind of breaks down what you need to know. That's how they need to go in and approach Blade. They don't need to worry about anything else that's happened in the MCU. Because just like we talked the other day about Moon Knight, he over here doing his own thing. You know, if he's over here like calling his mom, later Gators, and just living life and dealing with Khonshu and having his own drama, that worked. And it was good. They should do the same thing with Blade. I don't think Blade needs to be connected to anything. I don't care where he was during the snap. He didn't need to help with Thanos. None of that stuff is important. Focus on Blade and take us to this sex, because it doesn't have to be like there's millions of vampires across the world. There could be 10,000 vampires in the US and he's trying to hunt those 10,000 down and stop it from becoming something big. Stop it from getting out of hand, and we're good. And then you've just explained why we've never heard of this guy, why we've never heard of vampires, because it's a small thing and one person is already handling that. And if you try to take it to this whole multiversal threat and don't do too much. Nice, neat, precise, and to the point. Like that's what I want to see. I want to see Mahershala Ali on screen kicking some vampires' ass and saying cool shit. That's it. Don't complicate it. And I feel like that apparently is the problem. As Jeff mentioned, how do we introduce vampires into the... Don't worry about it. Talk about these vampires right here. That's it. We've already gotten some elements of the mysticism, and we've already gotten some... We're at the point now where there are whole scrolls. There are whole alien society. Vampires is where we have a problem. Like that's the thing we can't accept.
But they introduced the scrolls. They didn't just scrolls popped up. They introduced the scrolls slowly through various appearances across multiple media. It wasn't major for a lot of them. Sometimes it was just like you showed up here, you showed up there, there was in one scene. But when you get to Secret Invasion or Secret Wars or whatever,
Let's go back
when
to
you
Captain
get to
Marvel.
even Captain Marvel, like that takes it further, right? That goes into like explain, but that's not the first time Skrulls has shown up in the MCU. Now, maybe you didn't watch Agents of Shield and you don't remember them talking about that, but it was introduced kind of through that way. I think I don't think it's been an issue. I don't think when I say it's been an issue figuring out how to introduce them, I don't think it's been an issue where it's like we can't figure out a way to make this an all world threat. But I do think like the common question that I have seen a lot of times when you're watching an MCU movie is this is happening, where is Iron Man? This is happening in the Iron Man movie. Where's Thor? Like people because the threats for some of these movies have been global threat.
Right.
Like people do fairly wonder if this is a global threat where the across as you weave a more and more complex universe together, it does become more difficult, I think, to introduce new concepts. The occult being basically a new, larger concept because that introduces like a whole new. That's a doorway to a whole wing of a house. You know what I'm saying? Like you think you opening, like you like going to an Airbnb, you think you opening a closet, and it's like a whole new.
Vampires
It's like a
come out.
fan of
There are these
yes,
steps. Where
no,
do these steps go?
yeah, so I think like I actually want to I'm a lore person, especially when it comes to stuff like that. If I don't mess with like whatever your vampire and how they came about, I'm not really gonna be into it because I'm not a big like killer slasher vampire movie person to begin with. I liked Blade because it was like the martial arts elements, and I knew it was a Marvel character, so I liked kind of seeing what it's like to see a comic book played out on screen. To
Right.
me, as long as Blade is fighting and it's like good fight, I'm cool with whatever they're doing because I think they're thinking all of it through. But I just don't want it to turn into like some like weird I'm a tech blade and I just do this and like nah man, I need like Wesley Snipes is putting in that work. Like that's an unfair comparison because he a for real life black belt.
Yeah.
You
True
knew that
martial
when you
artist.
accepted the role of Blade, so I hope you've been in that gym. The fighting needs to feel realistic, and I don't want it to. I think his hand to hand combat part of what made that character cool. The sword makes that character cool versus
Yeah.
like just giving him a gun, silver bullets everywhere. Like, yeah, he got. Let's pull out all these other gadgets because I mean he's basically a cult Batman.
Very much so. And like I had mentioned on one of our previous shows, I was talking about Midnight Suns. And given that we already have some introduction off screen, given that we've already had some introduction to some elements of the occult, like you said, Doctor Strange is like the superhero magician. He's too big for the little guy as far as like what magic. The spells he's doing is on a different level. Wanda, we watched Wanda go from just doing this little bit by somebody's head to creating whole fictional towns that don't exist and changing the reality of that town to what she wants it to be. And then we see her in Multiverse of Madness and she's like a whole threat. So we watched how magic has grown in the MCU. If anybody's watching Agatha all along, we're getting more backstory of what exists and what's real. I'm air quoting that for those who are just listening. But we're getting, more examples of what's real and what's out there. We had Werewolf by Night, which was kind of a Marvel one shot thing. And boom, there's a werewolf. Anytime you tell me werewolves exist, I automatically say vampires. It's just how my brain works. Blame Twilight, blame whatever. I'm gonna say Bella Lugosi myself, but I'm gonna go
Yeah, they
way
were
back.
around. They were around and coexisting well before Twilight.
Yeah, I mean, like the whole Universal, like back in the day, that was their thing, and that was where we got creature features and that sort of thing, And so it's like once you've introduced werewolves, that just opens the door for the possibility of all the other things that go bump in the night. And we now have witches, we have sorcerers, we have werewolves. Why the hell wouldn't we have vampires?
I
Now,
think the
the whole
thing that's
point is that
probably
go
my
ahead.
bad. No, I was gonna
As I
say I
said,
think that the thing. Oh no, go ahead, go ahead.
let me get this last. I'm gonna get this last thought out. Why wouldn't we have vampire? The fact that you have like we have these things that go bump in the night, and we accept and we acknowledge these things over here. It's just the natural progression of the world. And generally speaking, vampires don't want you to know they're there. So they are hiding. They are keeping themselves hidden in secret. And, with the exception of like these crazy ass and rest vampires who just want to be like, oh, I wrote a whole song about how I'm a vampire and people love me for it. And I'm going to do a whole concert. That's not normal. That's not how vampires typically are. They're very reserved. They're very to themselves. They just have to go drink their blood, do their thing, and just live their vampire life. It would make absolute sense that vampires would not be a known entity in the MCU. So I don't think there has to be now. There's a way. I mean, we've got the Dark Dimension, we've got Dormammu. We know for a fact, finally, goddamn it, Mephisto exists. There's plenty of reason for vampires to be a thing without it having to be this global threat. It could be something that is small, centralized, and one man is making it his mission to track, find, and discover. And I think that's the way we get into it. And that could be the opening to the greater parts of the occult in the MCU. If they want to do the connected
But
bit,
the thing that I was gonna say, that I think that you also, it might not have to be a global threat, but you do have to have the vampires doing something nefarious to justify Blade killing. And you do have to figure out what their motivation is, right? Like across different vampire lore, the vampires have different motivations, which causes society to react to them in different. So
right?
like, I mean, even if you think about the initial creation of the vampire monster, it is a cautionary tale. Women not to be taken in by like alluring men with silver tongue. It's basically like, keep me over virgin. Dude's gonna try to talk. You know what I mean? Like that. I mean, that's essentially, you know, the meaning of the parable behind why they tell those stories and warn you about the. And if you don't have them doing something, then why is Blade like, that's basically
Blade
the
doesn't like
scroll
suck
story, right?
heads.
Right. But
Sorry,
it's like, but they're not bothering nobody. It's like,
I mean,
actually, Blade, you're
but
the
that's the
bad
thing.
guy.
All
So I
vampires look by default. All vampires are inherently evil because they have to have blood to survive. And this is not an opinion piece because I love the mythos of vampires and would do a whole special just on the topic of vampires. But in the MCU, in the world of Blade, vampires are going to be the evil creatures who are indiscriminately killing people for the blood because that's how they survive. And for them, there's going to be hierarchies. You're going to have your, you're going to have your Deacon Frost who want to find a way to take over the world and live forever because he's immortal and go and do something extra. And you know what I'm saying? And maybe the smaller vampires that you're taking out lead you up to that. You're going to have your in between vampires who, you know, three or four of them run around in a gang and they're making all these other little vampires who are out here. You hear reports of a town, like in Men in Black, like you hear those crazy reports in a town where a body was found and it was drained of blood. Well, Blade's going to go to that city because that city obviously has a vampire in it because that's the only reason a body's going to be drained of blood kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? If he gets there and it is a vampire, boom, he got him. If it's not, then they should have made it a TV show and that's the creature of the week kind of thing. He's always chasing the vampire. But since we're talking about the movie, it in my opinion, and it's just from what I think the average viewer can associate with, because again, we're talking about a character that's already been established on screen. So it doesn't take a lot. And it could be something in the writing. I will absolutely agree. It could be something in the writing because when you bring something into the MCU, there is that part in the back that's like, well, this now affects the entire MCU. What does Iron Man do if he runs into a vampire? A repulsor blast going to take him out? Thor might not have an issue with vampires. He might even know what they are because it's something, he's hundreds of years old. So he's probably encountered one or two before and didn't think anything of it. Just another creature that fell to Mjolnir. You know what I'm saying? What does Ant-Man do if he runs into a vampire? I get the implications of introducing something of this element into the greater aspect of the MCU, but that's why I think it is just as good to go with it being a standalone thing that is, for the moment, detached from the greater MCU. Establish the character, get that first movie out, get that warm reception, let people love on Blade. Then you bring him in and bring him around other people. Then you let him start having to explain that vampires walk the earth. Because if you tell Tony Stark vampires exist, my man done been in space, seen alien. Like at this point, well, you can't tell Tony, but you know what I'm
yeah, but
saying?
it's
If you
like
tell
Tony might be the vampire.
Right. I mean,
Right.
but you know what I'm saying? Like if you tell some of these other heroes, they've seen some stuff. They would be a little bit more open to the possibility of things because of what they've experienced. You know what I'm saying? It ain't just normal day to day for them. They're Avengers. Crazy shit happens out. I don't think a vampire is the farthest stretch for Spider-Man to be like. I mean, I think it would be great to have him be like, "What? Vampires are real? It's not just something." I mean, I think that works. It
Yeah, I'm
works.
not saying. I mean, I don't think they're trying to shoehorn the whole MCU to make cameos in the movie.
Oh
I
no.
think it's just. I think it's just gonna be one of those things. You do have to ask the question. I think they're trying to ask questions now, so that they don't have to try to retcon stuff later. And even though this movie might not have a world-ending threat, this might come up later. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and we just want to have our T's crossed and our I's dotted. We don't want to look disheveled. We don't we don't want to look like what we've been accused of, which is just like throwing anything against the wall. So yeah, we can make a standalone vampire movie and he just fighting vampires, and it can be a whole thing where this is going on underground while everything else is going on above ground. But at the end of the day, when it call when it all boiled down to it, if you don't get Blade around everybody else, now they're gonna be like, well, why are you keeping Blade separate? So the eventual integration still is an issue, and the introduction has to still set yourself up for a as seamless as possible an eventual integration of vampires, monsters. Because it's the same thing you said, Werewolf by Night. I mean, there's no superheroes in that. You know what I mean? Like that's just its own thing. Moon Knight, same thing. So they're doing the thing of slowly introducing like deities, you know, magic and different types of magic, which makes a lot of sense in how they've done it through the different characters that they've done it. But eventually, you know, even in Moon Knight, there are different types of gods. But we've already seen God Thor, so we know there's other gods and deities in this realm and things that people consider gods and all this other stuff like that. So when you see it show up in Moon Knight, now you're just okay, this is from a different culture, but so they exist too. It's not like, whoa, so how does this work? Like you already know. But now they're introducing something where it's kind of because vampires, like not only Blade, but vampires have their own lore. I've heard from things that I've read about vampire movies, vampires sucking can no pun intended, the vampire sucking can make or break the movie. Like if your vampire lore is whack, if the vampires who your vampire hunter is fighting is whack, then people not gonna care. So I think that there is a lot to kind of think about and get right here. And I think that Blade is the backbone, I believe, of really that occult wing of Marvel, not just like the magic side, but like the dark man, Doctor Strange on magic. Now we got Spider-Man tech. We got Sam Wilson on patriotism and heroism or whatever, you know. So
He's
I think
get that
the
man his props.
integration
We got
factor.
Captain America on patriotism and
Yeah,
team
okay.
leader.
All right.
Sam Wilson, Captain America. You got to say the
Team
whole
leader.
thing.
What team? What
Whatever,
team is he
whatever,
leading?
whatever team. The Young Avengers. I don't know something.
Man, every time we see him, they trying to take that shield off him. He ain't leading nobody.
That's what he got to do. He got to lead a team to show that he that man.
You think Harrison
He
Ford
got to
would have
get
put
that
his
respect
finger?
earned.
You think Harrison Ford would have poked his finger in Steve Rogers' chest talking about play ball?
Well, you know, like you
Exactly.
said, he got the
No,
serum. It's gonna make a
because
big
what he
difference.
said was, you might be Captain America, but you're no Steve Rogers. And every time I see that commercial, I'm like, what the does that mean?
You're
It just
black.
pisses me off. Don't be okay. We
Captain
can't have a
Affirmative
race
Action.
Indiana Jones.
He the DEI Steve Rogers.
I
Anyway,
want to Captain Affirmative Action.
don't do that. Don't do that. Get that man his props. He capped him. All right. Well, there's obviously still a lot to think about. Will they get Chad Stahelski to come in and handle all the action for Blade? We really got to see some top tier action. I do agree with you 100% there. And you bring up a good point. Like we can't have whack vampires. You know what I'm saying? If I see these vampires twinkling in the sunlight, I'm gonna feel some kind of way about that. So I will give you both of those. But I will also ask you to concede the fact that we've already had, you know, Man Thing, and we've already seen Werewolf by Night. We know that these things that go bump in the night exist. We've seen whole demons and Agatha. We've seen the Dark Dimension. We've seen the Dark Hole. It is not a far stretch for someone in the MCU to believe that these other things exist. And for that reason, I am still curious what is taking so long to make this movie. Marvel, what the hell? Let's get a Blade movie. Let's get it going. And I need you to renew Moon Girl, Devil Dinosaur. I need that to come on back. Let's just make that happen.
Yeah,
Put out some more. Put out some more merch for it. But that's going to be our show for tonight. I want to thank everybody who watched. Don't forget to click the QR code. Find us everywhere you can. We are Grown A Geeks. Make sure you like and subscribe if it's your first time here. Click the notification bell so that you can find out anytime we drop new content. For Teresa, first of her name, Jeffrey, JPNT17, I am Elder Geek Sam, and we are out of here. Peace.